Hey Gengar gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another one of my videos. In today's episode of TCG Toolkit, we go over how to price your Pokemon cards on the PSA website. So friends, today's video is partly inspired by other videos that have been going on in the community. Leonhardt made a really awesome video that I definitely recommend you go check out, and in the video he describes how you can use eBay to value your Pokemon cards. So in today's video, I thought it would be good to also provide a walkthrough of how you can go ahead and take either your raw ungraded Pokemon cards or Pokemon cards that have already been graded, search them up on the PSA website, and use the website to help yourself determine how much graded Pokemon cards are selling for. So the first thing that you're going to need to do in order to get to the PSA website is to go ahead and Google search it or type in the direct web address. The direct web address is psacard.com, but you can search things like PSA, Professional Sports Authenticators, or any of the other slew of Google searches that you can pull off, and you'll see this is the Google search you're looking for. We'll go ahead and click on the website, and while that loads up, I'll go ahead and say that for those who don't know, PSA is a professional sports authenticating service, and quite literally their name is Professional Sports Authenticators, and they, as you can see on their website, have authenticated about 80 million different collectibles over their time in the industry. They specialize in sports and collectible memorabilia, and one of those things, as you can see from the ads that are running on their page, is in fact Pokemon cards. In fact, they have recently hit a milestone of hitting 1 million Pokemon cards graded, and if you're in the hobby at all, you know that as long as a card is in a PSA slab, it contains a lot of value. So inherently graded Pokemon cards have become more and more popular over time, and PSA has definitely been at the forefront of making sure that your Pokemon cards retain their value once graded. Now, in order for today's video, we're going to go ahead and click on the Pop Report section. The Pop Report is short for the Population Report, and many YouTubers, especially folks who go ahead and do reveals of PSA graded returns on their channels, like Rhymestyle, will often reference the PSA Population Report, or for short, the POP Report. It tells you how many of a graded card exist. Now, it should be said that while we're on this page, you can actually scroll down and go ahead and search in the TCG card section of the categories. So PSA has a whole bunch of different categories through which they taxonomize their cards, and TCG is where Pokemon falls into. If you look, you'll actually see that there's even a Charizard first edition card as the thumbnail for that category. However, I personally find it easier to just go ahead and do a direct search for the card that you're looking for. Now, there are a couple of caveats with their search engine because it's not as optimized as, let's say, Google. With Google, when you type something in, it'll search that phrase backwards, forwards, and in all possible combinations. But with PSA, they search for the literal word. Now, as an example of that, I'm going to go ahead and search the word Charizard. And once it loads up, you'll see that it comes up with quite literally every single Charizard card in existence across several different pages. So we have tons of results here. Let's just say we were looking for a base set Shadowless card. The other thing to bear in mind is that PSA isn't the best with the way that they name their cards. They name their cards in a way that has evolved over time, and if you need evidence of that, you can look at some of the way that they used to name some of the older cards versus cards that they're naming today. It's evolved as the Pokemon hobby has evolved, but it's kind of weird because it means that sometimes it's not as predictable as you think it is to search a card up that was printed back in the early or late 90s or even the early 2000s versus something that was printed in 2020. Now, for us to go ahead and look up the 1999 Pokemon game, you'll then see that we'll be able to look up the Charizard Holo 4 Shadowless, or as we in the Pokemon hobby know it, the Shadowless base set Charizard, and then the same thing for the first edition, and then the same thing for the regular base set Shadowed Charizard. Now, if we click on this, you'll notice that we're not actually going to go directly to the Charizard page, even though that's what we searched. Instead, we'll be brought to a landing page that contains all of the Pokemon cards within that particular set. So this 1999 Pokemon game is actually base set. And what's even weirder is that there's no delineation between base set shadowless, and base set first edition. So if you wanted to look at the cards, you'll actually see that there are duplicates. So there's the Alakazam Holo, there's the Alakazam Holo first edition, and then there's the Alakazam Holo shadowless. So as you can see from this very brief overview, it is a little tricky to sometimes understand, but whenever you're looking something up, just make sure that you are using commonsensical words. So if we wanted to look up Charizard Gold Star, you should either look up Gold Star Charizard or Charizard Gold Star. And one of those two searches will usually get you exactly where you need to be at. The second item of recommendation that I have for you is to get on this website and play around with it a little. Nothing is easy until you actually start using it, and once you start familiarizing yourself with the way that PSA makes reference to certain items, you'll then be in a better position to very quickly navigate the pages and find the information that you need. Now, as you can see, I just searched Charizard Gold Star, and our results have loaded. Up here you'll see that the 2006 Pokemon EX Dragon Frontiers is a lot better than 1999 Pokemon game. So that's what I mean to say by their naming of Pokemon sets evolved over time. They started making it a little bit more commonsensical as times went on. And you can see for stuff like, 2014, they've already gone ahead and added in the generation as well as the delineations for Black Star promos and things of that nature. So again, a little bit of practice in this particular realm definitely gets you very far, because you'll be able to quickly search and learn how PSA names their stuff. So we're going to go ahead and click on the EX Dragon Frontiers set. Like I said, even though you search for a Pokemon card, the search results will bring you back to the set that contains that card, and then you'll be able to click on that card and see sale prices for that card. Now, once this page has loaded up, bear in mind that for the English Pokemon EX Dragon Frontier set, there was no first edition, there was only one set. So that's why there's only one location we can go to, as opposed to the previous version for the 1999 Pokemon card game, aka the base set, which had 3 different variations for English: base, unlimited, and shadowless first edition. Now, with all that said, a brief overview of the page that you're currently looking at now. As you can see the taxonomy, and as I had mentioned before, all Pokemon card games are categorized under the TCG cards section. They then do it by year, so you'd have to go to 2006 and then go to Pokemon EX Dragon Frontiers. Like I said, probably a lot easier to just use the search button and search for the Pokemon card that you need. Next, you'll see the name of the set, and then over here you'll also have the number of cards that have been graded, so the total population, as well as the total population of autographed cards. Now you might be asking the question of why autographed cards are even featured, and that's typically because, as I'd said previously, PSA is a huge authenticator of sports memorabilia, and in other niches such as baseball, hockey, and other sports games, there are tons of autographed cards. So that's why that is featured so prominently on the page, even if it may not be very relevant to us in this particular niche. Over here we have the pop report. We'll go over that right now. And then next to it is the APR button, and the APR button is the other important item that we'll be discussing today. I will briefly show you as well the registry and the shop functions, so I'll go ahead and do those after the pop. Down here in the pop section, we will have a filter button, so you can very quickly filter on a particular Pokemon if you'd like. So let's say you were searching for Charizard, you could try to click in here, and you could see if you could filter for it. The other thing you could do is you could go ahead and print out anything that you'd like. So I looked up the word ALT looking for Altaria, and as you can see, Ralts also has that ALT in it, but this is a very quick and efficient way of narrowing down that very large list of Pokemon cards to just the ones that you might need, right? So if I just wanted to see Altaria, this is a great way to quickly filter on just Altaria and see the population report. And then again, you could print. So you can print to your printer, you could print to a PDF. This is something that a lot of high-end collectors and card shops will use because they can print this out and then keep that documentation with a card that they have for sale. The idea behind this is that you will have the ability to then go ahead and show how rare this card is. Now, while we're on this particular filter, I would like to now walk you through how to read this table because this is the pop report. So, as you can see, you have the card number, which comes from the set. You have the name of the card. You have the shop button, which I will go ahead and click on for you right now. If you look at the shop button, it shows you any exact matches for this particular card. So looking for Altaria EX Holo on sale on eBay. As you can see, no exact matches were returned, but there were 9 related results relating probably to other Pokemon cards from various sets. Once over here in this table, you'll see that we have a couple different things. So across the columns, you will have the different grades. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, so on, all the way to 10, and then you'll have totals. So as you can see, in total, there are 96 Altaria EXs that have ever been graded and received a grade. You'll see the different qualifiers as well as the different grades higher, and those are particularly rare nowadays, but those are when a card receives anything other than a whole numerical grade. So you'll hear sometimes that cards receive something like a 9 OC or a 9 off center. And all that means is that there are some cards that are so off-centered that they cannot be given a PSA 10. However, if they weren't off-centered, they would have been considered a PSA 10 because everything else is perfect with the card. So that's where you would get something like that. And as you can see right here, there is a PSA 8 that had something wrong with it that added that qualifier to it. And then in addition to this, you're able to read this across the row. Now, it should be said that if you're trying to grade a card, this is a great way to find out information about how rare the card is, because as you can see, there are only 96 Altaria EXs in the world, and if you look, there's only 10 of them that have been graded a PSA 10. So in theory, following the logic of supply and demand, because there is so scarce a number here, this card as a PSA 10 should command a high price or a premium in the world, and in any auctions that may happen. Now, exactly how true that is also a function of whether or not the card is very popular. So you might be a fan of the Team Rocket Returns Gold Star Torchic. There are only 17 of those graded as a PSA 10, and it's because they're very hard to do so. Now, there's a difference between cards that are hard to grade as a PSA 10, like the Neo Genesis Typhlosion and the Torchic, because of how prominent the holo pattern is, or because how notoriously bad the print quality from that set was, and those cards that simply don't get submitted enough or aren't popular enough to merit attention. Personally, I think Altaria EX isn't necessarily one of the most popular Pokemon, and that's why there's only 96 of them in the world. If you look at some other Pokemon, you'll see that the numbers are far larger. However, it's not to say that this card couldn't spike in value in the future if Altaria sooner or later becomes a fan favorite. So that is how you read the population report. The same is true of the PSA DNA Certified tab. This tab specifically deals with autographed cards. So whenever PSA grades an autograph, they also imbue it with a special strand of DNA. It's kind of like their fancy gimmick. And those would be those cards. So as you can see, another thing you could possibly look at in terms of trying to price out cards is understand which cards might be very valuable when they are graded and autographed. And as you can see, there's only 7 cards from Dragon's Frontiers that have ever been graded. It looks like only 1 in the world is a Charizard Holo Gold Star. Now, I bet that is going to change because back in early 2020, Masakuta Fukada was in Texas, I believe, signing Gold Star cards. So I'm sure more people have gotten those cards graded and are sitting on them. And I also bet that once those cards are submitted to PSA and come back graded, we will see a large spike in this number. Now, with all that said, the other thing I would like to do is now point your attention to quite literally any other Pokemon card other than Altaria. The reason for that is because it helps to also see things in context. So as you can see, there's tons of cards here. They are, you know, all the different reverses. You'll see some are very scant, like only 4 of this Quilava card have ever been submitted. Some may even be 0. Fun fact, so there's only one Neat Arena Holo in the world, which isn't necessarily a rare card. It just means the card is not that popular and doesn't get submitted that much. I'm trying to find a 0. It doesn't look like there is. There are some very low numbers though, like 1s and 2s, which again is honestly not that bad. But at the same time, this is where you have to start to consider what cards are going to be in demand, because it is very clear that some Pokemon cards, because they feature a certain Pokemon, are very popular. And then other Pokemon cards that feature Pokemon that aren't so popular don't ever receive as much fanfare, don't sell for as high a price, and that is why it may not be worth your time and effort to get a card graded just because there is a low population of the card. Everyone likes Bagon, but no one's going to pay $10,000 for it, and that's why even though only 5 PSA 10s exist in the world, it's not that big a deal. Now compare that to some very fan favorite Pokemon, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and get you the Charizard and Mew Gold Star. As you can see, 1,000 of these have been graded, and for Mew, that number is even higher. Now for the PSA 10s, as you can see, there's 87 and 57 respectively. These are popular Pokemon cards, so because they are popular, even if there's a ton of them, right, comparatively to some of the other cards we've seen like the Bagon where there's only 5 of them in the world, this card will command a premium, a huge premium, because of 1, the rarity of the card, 2, the fact that it is a little hard to grade given the fact that it does have a holographic pattern on it, and 3, because Charizard is a fan favorite Pokemon, and that is just the way that that is. So, with all that said, you should now have a pretty good idea of how to read the PSA Pop Report and make some decisions and gain some insight based on what you're seeing. What I personally recommend you do is come here, get a set of cards that you want to potentially have graded, search them up, find out how many of them there are in the world, and see what the potential gain is if the card comes back as a PSA 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any or all of those types of cards where there's a decent sized return, or hey, maybe you're even just breaking out flat, but you can invest in these Pokemon cards, build your collection, and then over time the price of these cards can raise, is going to be a benefit to you as a collector and potentially as an investor. So that is how you would use the PSA Pop Report in order to get some insight into that. So now that we've gone over the Pop Report, let's briefly go over the registry and the shop. So the shop button we've kind of already explored. It works in the same way that it does at the individual line item level. The only difference is that up here, you're going to be able to scroll for the entirety of EX Dragon Frontiers. So as you can see, there's tons of EX Dragon Frontiers cards listed, and if you wanted to buy PSA graded variants of these cards, you could definitely scroll through and check them out. Down here, the only difference is that when I click shop down here, I'm shopping for that exact card, so that Ampharos Holo card, and as you can see, there are no exact matches, but there are 9 related matches. So just bear in mind that at any given point, eBay may or may not have the card that you're looking for. So I'm gonna click on this Mantine EX and see what happens. And yeah, no exact matches. It's such a rare card with only 2 of them in the world that good luck ever finding it on eBay, and if it does pop up on eBay, I don't know if it'll even be that big a deal. The registry, which I'll super quickly click on, is a function of PSA where as a account holder, you can actually create a registry of cards, and then you can add to your registry all the cards you get graded. So in a way, it's kind of like a collector's database, because as a collector, I can tell you all of the cards that I have, and then I can kind of sit there and be like, okay, look, here's my public list of cards that I have, and here's the set that I'm going for. So super quickly, you can see that there are some pretty important people for the hobby here, Gemmint Pokemon and TCA being 2 of those folks, right? I'm going to go ahead and click on TCA real quick, and TCA has always said that he's trying to collect a full set of Charizard cards. So every Charizard card that's ever printed, you know, he's out there doing it. And you can see each and every single one of the cards that he has collected, and he maintains this list. And he'll basically come in here every once in a while, update the list, let you know what he's picked up over the past couple of months, and then obviously year over year you can also sort of see his collection grow. So this is great for collectors because especially in other niches, you'll typically see a lot of folks who go ahead and put out these large bulletins that kind of show, here's my collection, here's what I have graded. You know, it's a great way to help people trade, because if you have a couple of one card and then you have none of another card, people might be able to reach out to you, trade. You can like, share, and tweet in a similar fashion to social media. So it is pretty cool. This set registry button, it's not something that I've personally ever gotten into, but it's fun, and in other niches, it's actually pretty popular. Now, lastly, we're gonna go over the APR button. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. APR will bring up a similar view to the one that you just saw. The only difference is all of the pop report numbers are gone, and instead we have a new filter. So first things first, with the filter, you can now filter by grade. If you filter by grade, right, so we're just filtering for PSA 10, you'll see a recent price, the most recent price actually, the average price, and then the lots found. So all the items or all the sales that they're tracking. Now I'm going to scroll down to this Gold Star Charizard card right over here, and I'm going to point out that the last card sold for $4,800, and then $4,366.11 is the average for that card. Over here, 224 lots. So what can you gain from this? An average is an average taken over a period of time, obviously. This is the most recent, but not necessarily the most accurate price, and I want you all to remember that because we will revisit that topic a bit later. And then you also have this 224, which is the amount of lots. When compared to something like this Tyranitar EX, it becomes relatively apparent that this Charizard is listed about 10 times more than this Tyranitar EX. So as an investor, you might want to ask yourself the question, given the price and the amount of volume, it may be better for you to get a good Gold Star and get it graded, or you might think the opposite way, which is also true. You might want to shark down here because these cards sell for so much money, it might be impossible to get your hands on one, and instead you can buy a couple of these, get them graded. There's less sales volume, meaning that you'll be able to take more of the market share, and at the same time, assuming you can get these cards for 20 bucks, you potentially could be making 10 times your money back when everything is said and done. So those are all some considerations that you take into account when you're getting cards graded, when you're thinking about how to invest. So the next thing is you can still, I'm going to go ahead and clear filter very quickly. You can still filter by name. I'm not going to do that again because it just takes 5 years to do, which is kind of annoying. And then the other thing that I want to show regarding this is you can now go ahead and click on any one of those cards that are hyperlinked. So I'm going to actually go ahead and clear filter because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and then we're going to go to the Charizard Gold Star. Now, what's going to load up is finally the page of what you were actually looking up. So remember when you first typed in Charizard Gold Star, we're finally at the page that's going to tell you the information that you directly wanted to know. Now, when you get here, just like the last page, you're actually going to see the number of sales and the value of the card. So again, this is the same 224 we were looking at previously. It just means that 224 sales have taken place that are currently logged on PSA's website, and then the amount of money that those sales have generated. So what you can see from this is that these numbers are relatively high, and that means that this is an expensive card. Sometimes you'll see cards that sell for much more, like in the millions of dollars, and other times it won't be too impressive, and that's okay. There is nothing wrong with smaller value cards. If you're looking to sell Pokemon cards, it's actually a pretty interesting idea if you can maximize volume versus maximizing quantity. So in a way, it might actually be better for you to sell a lot of cards with low profit margins but still make a big profit, as opposed to trying to get one of these cards, which may require a huge amount of effort and only return so little value. Just bear that in mind if you're an investor or someone who's thinking about getting started in Pokemon buying, selling, collecting, and trading. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at some other items. We do have the 4 boxes that we had previously, and now we do have this summary prices by grade. We're going to go ahead and click on that super quickly because I do want to show that to you all. On this page, we have what is actually very similar to what the graph that we saw on the previous page. You have the grade of the card, so anything that's been autographed, and then 1, 1.5, 2, all the way down to Gem Mint 10. You have the most recent sale price, and again, I'll point out this $4,800. I want you all to remember that because I'm going to talk about it just a little bit later. You have the average price, the SMR price. SMR is Sports Market Report, if I'm not mistaken. And if you are a member of PSA, I am, you get a monthly booklet / magazine that has published prices. The thing with SMR is that since PSA is such a huge company, that booklet is more dedicated to the sports markets as opposed to the trading card markets. Back in the day, and I believe up till now, they do have the first edition base set cards in there, but they don't have anything else from Pokemon in there. And if anything, it's all relatively older stuff. And I know we're talking about a card set that came out in 2006 in Dragon Frontiers, but I guess 2006 doesn't make the SMR report. So there is that. Next up, you'll see the population. So you'll see the amount of cards that exist in that particular grade. So there's 87 Charizards at PSA 10 and the population higher. So the way to understand that is that looking at PSA 9, you know that there are 87 cards that have had a higher grade, and that makes sense. And if you were to do the math here, each of these lines up in that particular order as well. So in theory, the 657 minus the 206 is the 449, so on and so forth. What's also cool is that you do have this relatively interactable graph. The red is the average price, and as you can see, the average is just slightly lower than the sale price. And then you also have this blue line, which is the actual most recent sale price. And again, I want to call to your attention this $4,800. We will be discussing that actually next. So with that said, let us go back to the Charizard Holo page one last time, and now I'll direct your attention to this lower section. On this lower section right over here, you'll see that we have date, price, grade, the lot, which is actually not really that important. It's just like a random number that PSA generates. You have the auction house, which is actually important because contrary to popular belief, it's not all eBay. There are many instances where you will see cards listed for sale at other auction houses, and I am scrolling and saying and telling you that, and I just ran out of page. So it looks like for this particular card, a lot of transactions happen on eBay. All of the transactions have actually happened on eBay, but occasionally you will see other auction houses listed, like the Card World or other very, niche type of auction houses. You have the name of the seller, which is pretty cool, so that lets you know who sold it. And then you also have the type of sale that it was, so whether it be best offer, buy it now, auction, and then the cert number for the card itself. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at something very quickly that I wanted to call out. So as you can see, if you click on any of the items, they do sort, which is pretty nifty. And what I want to point out are these 2 sales from a little earlier on in the year. So right here, we have 2 PWCC auctions, and as you can see, they're both for Charizard Gold Stars. They're both PSA 10. They're both on eBay by the same seller. But look at the cert number. Now, this is a topic that's actually outside the scope of this video, but PSA has been frequently updating their grading standards, and they have recently gotten a lot stricter. As a result, cards with older cert numbers like this one are typically graded less extensively than cards with an higher cert number. And the way that the cert numbers work is that it started in the zeros. Technically it worked, and now it's in its fours. So when you get a card that has a high cert number, especially something that starts with a 3 and especially something that has a 4 on it, there is a lot more quote-unquote value in that card because it is actually graded on a more difficult scale. Now, it's not to say that a PSA 10 with a smaller cert number isn't a PSA 10, because it is. But since PSA's grading, like any grading service, is very subjective, and especially because they have very clearly become a lot more difficult in terms of their grading standards in recent years, they can sell for different prices. Now, that's important because look at what happened when they sold on the same date a PSA 10 with a older cert number. It sold for $4,800, and that is the sale that is most recently being reported on PSA's data. So if you use PSA's data by itself, it can be very difficult to parse that stuff out, because the truth of the matter is they're just doing whatever happened chronologically. Now, if you very briefly look at this one, you'll see that on the same exact day, they sold one with a higher cert number in the 4s, and because of that, that card commanded a premium of about $800 greater. And let's just super quickly take a look at the card. As you can see, when you click on an image, it pops up and makes it larger, and you can scroll through them by clicking on the arrows to the left and the right. Here's the recent one, right? Starts with a 4, and then here's the one from previous. Sorry, I clicked on that wrong. Here's the one from previous, and you can see, I mean, I couldn't really tell you much of a difference between the two other than the cert number, but this is the real trick with this data, is that you do want to strive to understand it. So, in short, friends, thanks again for checking out today's video. The one thing I will say with PSA's data is, like I've called out, their search engine isn't always their greatest, and also, sometimes their summary prices by grade isn't also the greatest. There is a little bit of a trick, but the best thing you can do for yourself is filter for the grade that you want to see, just like I'm doing right now, and then manually try to find the highest price. As you can see, there is a little bit of a nuance to this stuff, but assuming you can do it, this is a great way to find out which one of your Pokemon cards might have a high value, and also which cards you should invest time in grading. Grading is a long and often scary process and can cost you a lot of money, between the cost of the actual grading of the cards, all the supplies that you'll need, shipping to and from, and the cost of insurance. Not to mention the fact that you're shipping out very valuable cards in a box that can easily get lost, stolen, or damaged in transit. So, doing this process really helps you to understand where you might be able to take a risk, where you might be able to make some money, and where you might be able to really help build out your collection based on the values that cards hold when they are graded with PSA. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, friends. Make sure to leave a like and comment if you did. I was thinking, just a thought, but there's this big old green start submission button up here, and I said, my, wouldn't it be great if someone made a video where you walk through how to do a submission for Pokemon cards? So, if you guys are interested, let me know that down below. I will gladly make that video. Seems like something a lot of folks are interested in. By the way, this video was something that a lot of folks have always asked me about. So hopefully this helped you to answer some of your questions. If you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. If you jumped around, I hope you did learn something. Definitely leave a like if you did. And yeah, friends, thanks again for checking out today's video. Much love. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Peace.